Welcome, everyone. So,
The first comment that happened here was he has hair.
say we were just talking about this yesterday. Yep, I do have hair. Also have a beard right now.
Well, it's been years since I've seen you like that, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
It's your winter coat, right?
I've got a sweatshirt on here, but oh, that's a joke. I see. Sometimes I don't understand when people are joking because of how my brain works. Okay, well, we'll begin with a little bit of practice. You can get into a position that's comfortable for you. That's what today is all about, finding a position that's comfortable for you. And really, for today, I would encourage you to establish any technique that you are familiar with, that you really like, feels interesting to you or alive today. But if you're not sure which technique to do, you can always do my favorite technique, which is following the breath at the abdomen. It's tried and true. You can feel the rising and falling of the sensations of the abdomen as the breath enters and exits the body. Really, any technique will do. Just establish yourself in a technique that you enjoy, that's interesting to you, and give yourself fully to it. Allow yourself to become engrossed in the technique. So that whatever technique you're doing, whether it's following the breath or something else, it's totally captivating you. As if you're speaking with someone and they have your full attention. And it's an interesting conversation that you're delighted to be having. See if you can bring that kind of gentle, curious fascination to the technique of your choosing. Even a simple exercise like following the breath we may have spent many hours doing that, can still be fascinating. How is that? How is that possible? Whatever technique you're doing, see if you can attune to what's interesting or surprising or delightful about that experience, even if it's small. Notice that and savor it. Even if you get distracted, you can become curious about that, be fascinated by that. What is distraction exactly? Where did I go and why? Great work, everyone. So, as usual, we'll have a chance to introduce ourselves now. We'll go around, I'll call on you, and you can say your name, and also for today, something about that practice period, about doing your technique that you noticed that was fascinating or enjoyable or curious or delightful, anything at all. Okay. So I'm Tasshin, and as I followed the breath, I noticed some feelings of pleasure in my legs and my belly and my arms that made it very delightful to follow the breath. Right. Margaret, would you go next?
Hi, I'm Margaret in Vermont. And I noticed when I drifted away from the practice, I was working on strategizing some new ideas for practice that I have. So I kept going back and forth.
Thank you. And Morgan?
Hi, I'm Morgan, also in Vermont. One of the things that I find the most enjoyable meditating often is having two things to simultaneously focus on. So that's what I was practicing, and noticing the sensation in the way when the air enters into my body has been really pleasurable, and then focusing on two things aside from that. So I don't know where else to go with it, but it's just fun, and I do love it. I did notice there was like a heaviness in my chest or in my breathing that I was kind of curious about where that came from.
Wonderful, thank you. And Willow?
Hi, I'm Tasshin. I was really enjoying connecting with the part of me that was really quite certain that this is the time to plan things. I didn't feel angry towards it. I was just kind of curious about it, which felt really nice.
Yeah, I'm Colin. And while I was trying to extend my exhale, I noticed a sort of gentle tautness of my belly. So it's nice.
Hi, I'm Yuli. And the thing I found most interesting and curious was the kind of constants of the perception of something stable in my chest area. So there was a kind of like bunch of stuff that was fluctuating, but then there was some sort of central piece that appeared constant. It had some light fluctuation to it, but even in its fluctuation, it almost remained as a steady piece for sort of like this extended period of time. And I thought that was so just interesting. I just kept looking at it, going like, oh, and you're just still here. And it's like moment by moment it's being created, but it's here and looking and feeling stable. So that was just super interesting, this constant thing.
I'm Uli, and I was following your instruction about feeling the breath at the abdomen, and I was just enjoying a lot of relaxation, like a lot of, I guess I was surprised to be that relaxed that fast. So that was quite enjoyable.
Wonderful. And Pam?
Hi, everyone. I'm Pam from Los Angeles, and I was focusing on flow. It's windy out here, and there were airplanes and birds, and I felt very lulled by it, and I think I fell asleep so much so. But then I came back, and it was still there. It was very interesting for as long as I was awake.
Great, great. And Stanley?
Hi, I'm Stanley. I'm Tasshin's father from Massachusetts, and I'm working on focus and being present.
Great, thank you. And Jenny?
Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm from Utah. Let's see, I noticed as I was noticing my breath, I also noticed lights and colors behind my eyes that were kind of pulsing with my breath, which was fun. I was enjoying that. Um, I noticed there was tension in my back. I was scanning my body as I was breathing, it was going up and down, and noticed kind of as it was going up and down how it felt. That was interesting. Um, Noticing it, how it felt dreamlike. That was fun. Thanks.
Mhm. And Jeff.
Hey everyone, I'm Jeff from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I fell into, I was looking around for something interesting, and then I just focused on, I used labels and just used feel to feel my abdomen raise, and then on the breath out, I just used release, kind of like released my body into open space, and found that to be interesting. Thanks.
Wonderful. And Sam?
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm from California, and you said something about like being fascinated about distractions. I would find myself distracted by some thought, and then I would think before going back to the breath, I'd think like, why am I thinking of this? And I found that meta space of like understanding why this is capturing my attention at this moment was a good place to be for a few seconds before going back to my breath.
Mm. Great. Great. Well, it sounds like everyone or nearly everyone found something interesting or exciting about their experience. And so that's really great work. One of the biggest things that I uh, hope to share as someone who teaches meditation is that this can be, believe it or not, fun. Meditation can be fun. I've gone through long stretches of my own practice sort of forgetting that, letting it become routine and predictable and dry and oppressive even. Meditation can even sometimes feel like something we're doing to punish ourselves subconsciously. And that's not fun. So if we can attune to things in our practice that are fun, even if they're small, a very small pleasant sensation or relaxation, or just a genuine question of what is distraction and why does it happen and why am I doing that? Anything at all that makes it curious and interesting and alive and fun for us is what brings life to the practice. Not only making it enjoyable, but also useful and beneficial, that we have real insights that shift our experience of the practice and shift our experience of our lives in meaningful ways that last. Uh, Probably everyone here has one or more hobbies, things that you really enjoy doing, things that you find nourishing. And when we have that relationship to some activity, something in our lives, we don't have to be convinced to do it. We just do it. We go out there and we go out for a hike, or we're reading books or listening to music or whatever it is for us. We just enjoy that and naturally feel called to it. We don't have to force ourselves to do it. We just do it because we enjoy it. And that's the kind of relationship that we want to build with meditation practice, where it's something that we're delighted by and we can't wait to do it. You have to convince us not to. You're working during the day at your job and you just can't wait to finish up work so you can have a meditation sit. It's possible to have that kind of attitude towards practice, and as much as possible we want to cultivate that, and we do that by rejoicing in our experience, even the small things, a little bit of relaxation, a little bit of pleasure, a little bit of curiosity, even if it's small, if it's genuine, it's real. And we have to savor that and soak it up. So I'm glad that you are all, or mostly all, able to connect to something like that in your practice. Sometimes that can be hard. It can be challenging, but half of the battle, as it were, is just remembering that it can be fun and looking for that, noticing it. It's actually sometimes not that hard to notice if you're looking for it. Relaxation, for example, there's almost always at least some relaxation in the body somewhere, even if it's a very difficult day for you and your body is very tight. You can find some relaxation somewhere, or even if your experience is terrible, there's a difficult emotion in your body, or you just keep getting distracted, you can still become curious about that. What's happening here exactly, and why? And is there something I need to learn from this or notice about this? Even a difficult experience can be interesting. And that's better than it being boring, even if it's still difficult. This is actually quite closely related to our main topic for today, which is the traditional numbered list, the 4 postures. So folks that were here last summer when I was teaching will remember that we went through quite a number of the Buddhist lists, sort of a series of talks that I gave last summer. And the sort of intention behind that series was that by focusing on the numbered lists of Buddhism, it's sort of a entry point to the Buddhist teachings, that it's easier to remember and understand and connect the Buddhist teachings to our life and our practice if you have these numbered lists memorized or if you're familiar with them. So we went over things like, the 3 jewels, or the 4 noble truths, and the 4 bodhisattva vows, and the 5 precepts, and things like that. And that was a lot of fun. I had fun giving those talks, and I hope those of you that were here for some of them enjoyed them as well. But I won't be continuing that series per se, but it felt important actually to talk about the 4 postures, and I thought I'd share that with you today. It's not quite like the others in the series that we did last year. I picked kind of the most important numbered lists that I could think of that I felt that were worth sharing. And, it may not be obvious that the 4 postures would be important in the same way. I'd say the 4 noble truths or the 5 precepts or things like that are certainly more central to the Buddhist teachings. But from this attitude that we're taking today, where we're trying to find delight in practice and enjoyment and satisfaction, this list is actually quite important. So the 4 postures are the 4 most basic postures that our body can be in. There's sitting, standing, lying down, and walking. And every arrangement of the body, of the human body, is sort of a variation on, or the same as, these 4 postures. So of course you could describe it in different ways, but this is sort of a simple way to look at the different postures that we can be in. And much of meditation's instruction is concerned with seated meditation. There's a lot that you can find that's about sitting, which is what many of us are doing right now, sitting in a chair or a cushion. That's sort of what you associate Buddhist meditation with, is seated meditation, right? But there's actually 4 postures, these 4 postures, which means that there are 3 other ones besides sitting, and they're all important and useful and have different benefits and uses for our practice. And it can be beneficial to sort of have them all in our practice, so that we do some seated practice, we do some standing practice, we do some lying down practice, and we do some walking practice. You don't have to do those all every day, but it's useful to be familiar with them, to know how to do them, and to know which one's suitable when, and decide to do one that feels right or seems useful for you where you are on a given day. And because seated meditation is so primary in the way that meditation is often taught, it's easy to have sort of a bias where you think it's intrinsically better than the others. And there's reasons for that. It's a good balance of being alert and relaxed. That's what we always talk about here. That when you have your spine upright, but your body is relaxed, then there's alertness that comes from that in the mind, and also calm and relaxation and equanimity. So there's a reason for it. It's useful, but there's actually benefits to the other postures as well. And in fact, I'd say that the other postures are, you might say, chronically underrated, especially even in the inverse order of the, so that they're usually presented. So sitting meditation gets the most attention. There's a lot that you can find on walking meditation. Increasingly, there's some things here and there about lying down meditation, and then not so much typically that you'll come across, at least in contemporary meditation discourse, about standing meditation. And I don't know, to me right now in my own practice, this is the exact opposite order of the way I would want to teach them and present them. So I'd put sitting last, actually, even though it has so many benefits. It's the one I'm least excited about in my own practice. And also, I think maybe the one I would sort of emphasize the least was someone that was brand new to meditation as well. And this has been a bit of a shift for me in my own practice, and also the way that I'm teaching over the last year or so, partly for a couple of different reasons that I'll share. Hope to sort of offer a different perspective on practice that's more rooted in this sense of having fun and enjoyment and curiosity. So over the last year or so, on the one hand, I was increasingly noticing a dis-ease in my own practice. I would sit down to meditate and I wouldn't enjoy myself, and I'd be like, well, what's this all about? That was interesting, at least. Why am I not enjoying myself? And over time, it became more and more clear that I was developing somewhat of an aversion to seated practice in the way that it's usually taught. It wasn't feeling good for me and my body to do seated practice. And, sometimes, like early in my meditation career, I had a lot of difficulty with like fidgeting and not feeling comfortable in my body, but it wasn't quite that. Over time, typically that sorts itself out when you meditate for a few years, which is good news for folks that are just getting started, because it can feel painful to meditate or uncomfortable. But that sorts itself out often with 2 or 3 or 4 years of regular practice. The body starts to feel at ease and feel comfortable. So it wasn't like I was having aches or pains, and I wouldn't get a terrible amount of fidgetiness. I could sit still for a long time, which I often need to do in my line of work. Yes. It wasn't that. It was more subtle than that. And I think there were 2 different aspects of this aversion. On the one hand, partially because of sitting meditation, but mostly because of other factors in my life. I'd done quite a bit of damage to my right leg. I had Lyme disease a few years ago, and it attacked my right knee, and then that made my ankle and hip sort of more susceptible to damage. And I was running a lot and hurt my ankle, and then the hip also has been sort of acting up. My right leg is not in great condition. And so on the one hand, my body, when I was doing seated meditation, was, sort of subconsciously concerned that it was going to be getting injured. I was afraid of re-injuring my body or exacerbating my injuries. And this is reasonable, actually. Seated meditation can injure your body, especially in excess. And especially if you're not taking care of it or if you have existing injuries, as I did. So, you know, it was reasonable, I think, to be concerned about injuring my body. But there's also, on the other hand, just a desire to be moving, to be fluid, to feel comfortable and alive in my body in a way that doing mostly seated meditation wasn't bringing me into. So I would feel, for example, just sheer delight when running. This is part of why I injured my ankle, because I was just enjoying running so much that I did it too much, right? This is becoming a theme, right? Too much of a good thing. Too much sitting can injure the body. Too much running can injure the body. Any of these postures, if you do too much of them, might not be good for you and your body. So we can know that. You can learn from my mistakes. In any case, but there's this desire to be alive, to be moving, to be flowing, to be vital in my body in a way that you can certainly feel in sitting meditation. But for me, it was like I was in a room that hadn't been aired out in a while, and it was starting to smell a little bit, right? Nothing wrong with being in a room, but it's good to get some fresh air. And so similarly, I really found myself craving to bring the practice into these other postures and situations. And so that sort of combination of factors made me look around. And so there's actually a number of different, contemplative movement practices. Of course, there's yoga and Tai Chi and Qigong, and I was getting quite curious about these things. And in the course of my research about these things, I learned something that was quite interesting, actually. There's a distinction in the martial arts between external martial arts, which are concerned with sort of strength and muscle power and sort of imposing your body on your opponent, and then internal martial arts, which are more about the awareness of yourself and your body and energy in your body and things like this. And that's sort of what they're designed around. And it turns out actually that most of the internal martial arts, which is what I was interested in, traditionally, if they were taught, so if you were interested in Tai Chi or Qigong or Bagua or Xingyi, which are some of these things, traditionally, you wouldn't actually start with them. Nowadays you can pay for a Tai Chi class or a Qigong class and, walk in or go to a Zoom room and pay $15 and you're learning some Tai Chi or some Qigong. And that's wonderful. But they actually wouldn't do that. They wouldn't let you learn these things right off the bat. Instead, the prerequisite for learning these internal martial arts or these contemplative movement practices was what's called Zhanzhuang or Jamzhang, which is standing like a tree or standing practice. So they would show you a posture, a standing posture, and until you got to the point where you could stand for something like 45 minutes or an hour in these postures, they wouldn't teach you the Tai Chi or the Qigong or whatever it was that you were interested in. You'd have to show a degree of mastery in these standing practices. And when you first encounter this, I remember I first saw someone doing standing practices. Like, what are they doing? They're just standing there. That can't be. What are they doing? They're just standing there in this weird posture. They look kind of weird. I don't know what that's doing for them. I think that's silly. It's kind of this judgmental attitude. But if you try these postures, and you can learn more about them after today if you like, they're actually quite challenging. You're standing there even for 5 minutes and it's, you can be sweating or shaking or your muscles can seize up or something. It can be quite challenging and it's surprisingly challenging, in fact. And so that's part of the reason that these were so required, because you have to work through subtle muscular tensions and learn to relax. And then when you learn to relax, then energy starts to flow through your body just of its own accord. Because you're relaxed and you're standing, then the energy starts to move through your body in good ways, which is tremendously useful, certainly for meditation practice, but also, of course, for these internal martial arts that are based off of having positive, healthy energy flow in the body. That's where their power comes from, rather than strictly, how big you are or how much muscle power you have. So I started exploring Zhanzhuang on my own. Been doing this for the last 8 months or something like that, after years of dabbling with it, and I've been practicing it every day, and it has tremendous benefits. As I say, the energy just starts to flow through your body in these amazing ways, just of its own accord, not without extreme effort, other than showing up and getting into the postures. Generally, you want to warm up first, but you warm up, show up, get in the posture, and if you do that every day consistently, then energy just starts to flow in your body in really good ways. So I was really taken by that, because when I'd accessed energy in my meditation practice, in my seated meditation practice, I could access those kinds of energy flows through different kinds of techniques, but usually with immense effort of maintaining, for example, a breathing technique in a certain way. And then energy would flow, and it would be very effortful and difficult, and frankly, not very fun. Not very fun. It would be effortful and tiring and exhausting. Whereas with this, you just stand in the posture, and it can be a bit uncomfortable, as I say, but the body adapts pretty quickly. And then if you just show up every day, then the energy starts to flow in good ways. So I'm pretty bullish, you might say, on standing practice right now. It's been a real delight for me in my own practice and my own life. It's my favorite part of my day, probably every day, when I assume the standing posture and feel energy start to flow in my body. It's like I'm a battery that's getting recharged, except it's also sort of increasing the capacity that the battery has. So I have more and more energy every day. And it's really delightful. It feels very good. So that's really the main benefit, I'd say, of the standing practice is that it sort of relaxes your body and allows energy to flow. And why, I am really emphasizing teaching it sooner in someone's meditation development than I certainly learned it. But the other postures have benefits as well. So lying down, that traditionally the benefit of that is that it really allows you to deepen into this relaxation, because you're lying down, you don't need to use your muscles so much, and so your whole body can relax. Your whole body can relax, and that's a very enjoyable experience. Of course, the risk there is that you can fall asleep, have drowsiness arise, become sleepy, and so you just know going into it, this is a risk, and if I become sleepy, then I'll, sit up and be more alert and wakeful. But if you can stay awake, then it's tremendously relaxing and enjoyable, and a totally legitimate form of practice. Again, it's not lesser than sitting practice. And then, of course, there's walking meditation, which is by far the best kind of practice for integrating these stillness practices into motion. How can I stay with these qualities of mind, of concentration, clarity, and equanimity, even though I'm moving and seeing things and things are changing? As we walk, we can bring this practice into motion, and it's a safe environment to learn those skills, rather than driving or being in a work meeting or something like that, which of course it's good to bring the qualities of mindfulness to those things if you can. But when you're just doing walking meditation, say walking back and forth in a room, the risk level is low. There's no side effects if you have a hard time with it, in the same way that, if you are having difficulty bringing mindfulness to a meeting, that might have some negative side effects for you or your career, or at least that meeting or something, right? It's not so bad if you're just walking around the street. And of course, sitting in formal stillness, seated postures is tremendously beneficial. It's still excellent there's no reason not to do it. It's a good thing to still make the cornerstone of your practice. But my main sort of claim with this talk is it's useful to be able to practice in each of these things, to notice what we're called to, notice what their benefits are, and have sort of a healthy mix of these things without overemphasizing any one or the other, right? If we have too much of a good thing, then it can become stuck or have problems where we hurt our body or we're just not enjoying it. But by being acquainted with each of these different modalities of practice, then we can have a really healthy and well-rounded mindfulness practice. And ideally, we can really learn the meta skill of bringing the same qualities of mindfulness that we're cultivating through whatever technique we happen to be cultivating into each of these postures. And if we're able to do the same technique in each of these postures, to have the same qualities of mind manifest in each of these postures, then it's easy to infuse the rest of our life, even at a higher difficulty level, with these same qualities, right? It's not a big leap to go from any of these postures to driving or meetings like we talked about, if you're able to do the same technique in each of these situations. It becomes less of a challenge to do that, to integrate in that way. So that's really our goal for today. The simple instructions are going to be to establish a technique, maybe the same technique that you did earlier, and bring it through each of these postures. So we'll start with lying down, and then we'll go to seated practice, and then to standing practice, and then to walking, and we'll come back after a few minutes of walking. We'll spend roughly 10 minutes in each posture, and you'll want to make sure that you can have each of them available in your space. So, maybe finding a place that you can lie down, or that you can sit, or that you can go out for a walk. Of course, if one of them is not possible for you in your current situation, that's no problem. You can just pick another one to do a little bit more of. That's no problem. And I'll just mention a couple of just helpful points before we dive in. Just to reiterate that with the lying down posture, the most important thing is to stay awake. So if you find yourself falling asleep, no problem. It's very normal to have sleepiness arise when you're lying down, but just have the intention to sit up if the sleepiness arises. Trying to cultivate wakefulness and mindfulness, and sleepiness is the opposite of that. So it's very normal, no problem. You're not a bad person if sleepiness arises. It's very human. It's what bodies do. But do have the intention to stay wakeful and to get up if you're sleepy. And then with the standing posture, I'm not going to be giving very much instruction with it. I'll demonstrate the posture that I use every day, so you can copy me if you like, or just keep your arms at your side. The most important thing with the standing posture is to not lock your knees. So you want to have a very slight bend in your knees. It's very important to take care of the knees, and by not locking them when you do the posture, then your knees will be okay. So that's the number one rule. There's a lot of nuance that you can learn about how to do the standing postures. But as far as I know, from what I've been exposed to it, the main thing in terms of a health thing is just don't lock your knees. Let there be a very slight, gentle bend in your knees. And as long as you do that and your body feels okay, you're great. Of course, if your body is saying, hey, I don't like this, this is too much, listen to that. You don't have to stay in the posture. But other than not locking your knees, there's not too much guidance that's needed just for a few minutes. So if you like, you can copy what I'm doing, but you don't have to. You can just keep your arms at your sides. The main thing is to be standing and to see how bringing a technique into that, what that's like. And I guess that brings us to the last point, which is we're going to be maintaining the same technique in each of these 4 postures, and pay attention to what that's like for you. The variable that we're changing is what posture your body is in, but we're going to keep the technique the same, right? And yet your experience may be drastically different from one posture to another, and maybe in ways that surprise you. So be attuned to that. Notice what it's like for you to be lying down, or to be standing, or to be walking. Maybe something will surprise you that that you need to know in your practice of, oh, I really enjoy this, or this is really hard for me, or, this thing happened. So be attuned to what it's like to bring the same technique into each of these 4 postures. Great, great. So we'll begin, as I say, with some lying down practice. So I'll be lying down as well, so you may not be able to see me. Let me know if you're having trouble hearing me, but just find a way to lie down in your current situation if that's possible. And we'll be moving through each of these for about 10 minutes each. So once you're lying down, establish yourself in a posture that's comfortable. There are a lot of different ways to lie down, on your back or on your side, with your knees up or your knees down. For this exercise, it doesn't matter so much which particular alignment of your body you're in. Just find what feels comfortable for you right now. You may need to make an adjustment, like adding or subtracting a pillow, getting a blanket, moving your body slightly in a certain way. But optimize the position of your body for comfort and relaxation. And having established yourself in a lying down posture, begin to take up a meditation technique. Perhaps the same one you did before, perhaps a different one. The default, of course, would be following the breath at the abdomen. It's always a good option. But it's not so important which technique you do. Just use this lying down posture as an opportunity to explore a meditation technique. And as we do our chosen technique, we can remember that the lying down posture is optimal for relaxation. So we can see if there's a way to deepen into that. If there's any tightness or tension in our body, allowing ourselves to notice that and relax, letting go of tension and tightness. Even as we do our main technique, can still be increasingly relaxed. And notice what it's like to do your technique in this posture. And in a moment, as you're ready, you can transition into a seated posture while still maintaining your technique. So there's no gap between moment to moment as you do your chosen technique, even as you transition the arrangement of your limbs, continuing to be mindful. And we're simply continuing with the same technique, but in a new posture. Allowing our spine to be upright while still having that same quality of relaxation in the limbs. Letting go of any muscular tension. And noticing what's it like to do this technique in this posture. It may feel different than the way your body felt when you're lying down. And it may feel different than the way you normally feel when you do seated practice because you were lying down. Continue the same technique, whether it's following the breath or something else. But in this new posture, noticing what that's like. In a moment, we can transition into standing posture, maintaining the same technique, but in a new posture. And whether you copy the posture that I'll demonstrate or not, be sure that your knees are slightly bent, taking care of your body. Very good. And when you're ready, you can transition into using the same technique with walking. You can walk in the room that you're in, or if it's possible where you are, I'd recommend walking outside. And if you do go outside, you can just plan to be back in about 10 minutes or so. Just maintain the same technique in motion as you walk. And as you're ready, you can come back. So as usual, we have a little time for discussion, any questions that you may have about the talk or the practice, or any comments you'd like to share or reports. Anything at all is fine.
Hey, Tasshin, it's Jeff here.
Hi, Jeff.
Um, that was very cool. I'm gonna have to start doing 10 minutes of each, and I'd love some more information about the standing practices. But the main thing I wanted to share is it was relieving to hear about that you'd had Lyme. Like about 10 months ago, I got Lyme and parasites, and it attacked the left side of my body, kind of, and so much inflammation. And it's still 10 months later, and I had never had any sickness in my 42 years. And my brain just started obsessing. Like a couple nights, I felt like I almost died. I had to go to the emergency room, but my brain had never been obsessed with like feeling really scared. Like I'm a dancer, a drummer, and I referee soccer, and just worrying about my left leg or am I going to die? I've never had those kind of hindrances in my practice ever. So I know how I've been practicing with it, but I'm getting so much better 10 months later. But just the fact that you shared you had Lyme, I'd love to hear if you had it, just your perspective on it. Just to hear another person's is always good for me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It sounds like you've been really through a hard time with it. And yeah, I was pretty lucky, honestly. I had I think as far as Lyme goes, a pretty mild case. It just attacked my right knee, and that was, I don't know, 4 years ago now, and got it diagnosed and went on antibiotics, and mostly the main side effect that I've had has been damage to the knee from it being inflamed, and then you know, further damage to the leg because of the knee damage. But I don't seem to have lasting symptoms of the Lyme itself. And I know a lot of people have chronic pain, or it can attack their brain, and have like mental symptoms, and been very blessed and fortunate to not have a very severe case. So yeah, I don't know if that speaks to what you're looking for, but that's sort of what my experience with it has been. Just that I've been pretty lucky as far as Lyme goes, from hearing other folks talk about it. So
Yeah, I get you. You don't have to answer this, but I guess my question was something in the. I've always had hindrances, but it's never been like, am I gonna die? Like such intensity of, and they're slowly lowering. So just in that realm is kind of my question.
I see. That makes sense. So yeah, I've definitely had experiences of that sort of thing. You know, when I've been sick, sometimes I've had sort of like had extreme thinking, or things like that. But the thing that's mostly coming to mind is I was on a plane in between two islands in Indonesia, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, and I'd been practicing for 3 or 4 years at that point. And it was like a normal flight, and then there was just a tremendous amount of turbulence very suddenly, and the whole plane went like this. Like, we must have jumped like 10 or 15 feet in the air, very suddenly, and everyone on the plane like screamed, and then the turbulence was over very suddenly. There was very extreme turbulence very quickly, and my body was just in a total fear response, and I was like watching that, with the mind of a meditator. So I was like, okay, like this is a lot of fear in the body right now. It caught me by surprise, and there was both a tremendous amount of fear and the sort of curiosity, really, that I was talking about earlier, where it's like even a very extreme and difficult and challenging experience can still be interesting. At least it's like, well, this I didn't expect this, and I was curious to see how much fear there was. It was probably one of the times that I felt the most fear in my life, and certainly thought I was going to die. And I was with my best friend, and it was just one of those moments where I was grateful to be with him. I was just like, I love you. I think we're going to die now. So it's been good knowing you. So I don't know if that's exactly the kind of experience you had, but I think, everyone in life most everyone goes through some things like that. I mean, if only when we do actually die. Of course, it might happen peacefully, which is great, but for a lot of people, it's not peaceful or difficult or challenging. And a lot of people talk about meditation practices. That's what you're preparing for, for that extreme degree of physical, emotional, mental discomfort, confusion, overwhelm. And, that's part of why it's good to practice. It doesn't make so much sense if you think that you'll live forever to sit still and practice with these difficult things. But in fact, we're going to die. So this practice in stillness and with pain or difficulty or challenge or strong emotions prepares us for that. It doesn't mean it'll be easy. I don't know. I haven't faced that myself yet. We'll know when we face it for sure, but probably it'll be hard, and harder even than I'm expecting right now. But I do believe that this practice helps us prepare for that. So, so it's good that we're doing it.
May I share some reflections?
Please.
Having had Lyme disease, for whatever reason, what's coming up for me is the Walt Whitman quote of "To die is better than anyone supposes." And whenever I think about that quote and the experience of loss, which I think is also a form of death, when you've had capabilities or capacities that you no longer have access to, or activities that you can't perform at the level that you had normally had become accustomed to, then there's all these layers of acceptance around working through that, to my experience, that is similar to a death, and that death itself is just something that we're all on the way to, and that sometimes when you lose something that you need to accept, the beauty of that becomes more compelling than that which you've lost. And that's what I think that Walt Whitman might have meant when he said, "To die is better than anyone supposes."
Thank you for sharing, Morgan. Are there any other questions or comments about what we're just discussing or anything at all?
I can say something about this, not about Lyme disease specifically, but as some of you know, I had an experience a few years ago where my son was very sick for about a year. And for me, that was a year of horror. And it was very difficult for me to practice. But in Shinzen's Science of Enlightenment, he has a chapter on death. And basically, it was helpful to me. That idea, I think that Tasshin was saying is we get this choice between fear or living, and we have to use the discipline of the practice to work through it. And that helped me some so that I could function. And then my son died, and I can't say which was worse. But all through that period of about 16 months, I was in a high state of anxiety and fear, and then of course suffering. And so to the best of my ability, I very disciplinedly stuck with the practice and tried to work most on the stories. Just breathe. What do they say? Feel the feeling and skip the story, because the story's not true. It's just my brain rambling on about the story. What's happening is what's happening, not what I think about what's happening. And so that's how I managed it. I won't say I managed it very well, but I managed it and came through it. So stick with the practice, it works.
Thank you for sharing that, Margaret. It's good that we have so many wise folks on this group.
Tasshin, I do have a question about the practice, the
Sure.
standing practice.
Mm-hmm.
But show me what you did with your arms. I couldn't tell. They were hugging, in a hugging form. Okay.
Yeah, the traditional image is that you're holding a balloon or like a beach ball, and or a ball of energy, and it's sort of holding it in, and even that it's trying to expand, and you're sort of holding it back in. Yeah.
So it's a chi kind of thing.
That's right. There's actually, I've been working with a teacher on my Jumjong practice, but there's a book that you can read that's not quite the style that I do, but it's still, it's very good. And the book is called The Way of Energy by, I believe, Master Lam Kam Chun or something, but definitely Master Lam. It's called The Way of Energy. It's very approachable and discusses why you would want to do standing practices and the benefits that they have, and has a very good gradual program for you to do. Certainly it talks about it in more detail than I would be able to today. Or, I mean, frankly, with the standing practices, I'm a bit of someone that's like, they went to a meditation class and they're really excited about it. And so they're talking to people about it, and you can teach from that. That's wonderful. It's good to share that excitement, and the techniques are pretty simple, so you can talk about them. But in any case, what I mean to say is, I'm not an expert at it or anything like that, and so I know there's a lot of nuance that I wouldn't be able to do justice to at this time. But it is a wonderful practice, not only for spiritual practice, energy cultivation, relaxation, and so on, but also, of course, traditionally for the martial arts and self-defense and things like that. But also importantly, and this is a big part of why I got interested in it, is it's excellent, reported to be excellent for generally for health. So of course in the West we take sort of an approach to fixing problems when they arise, but in sort of Eastern, more holistic medicine, they take sort of a preventative measure, and Jemjong is considered to be basically the gold standard of preventative health investments. So, I've been using it to help heal my knee and leg actually, and it seems to be helping with that in pretty noticeable ways. So, it takes time and diligence and showing up, but that's part of why I became interested in it as well. It's the health benefits. Yeah, Jenny. Oh, you're still muted, Jenny.
Can I share a quick story from the walk I went on?
Please.
So it's quite cold here, but sunny out. And I walked up the hill, and on the way back down, I noticed something in the sky, and there's a pair of peregrine falcons that live in my backyard. And it was just sitting there hovering as I was walking by. Just beautiful. Like, it's just, they're such beautiful birds. And it was just hanging out. And then just now, while you were talking, it flew by the window. And I just thought I'd share the story.
Mm.
It's lovely.
Thank you for sharing, Jenny. And that really circles back to what we were talking about in the very beginning of enjoying the practice. And when you do this outside or in nature, it's really easy to connect to that, how delightful it is to practice. And it's almost sort of backwards how much we do practice inside in these rooms with these, air conditioning and heating and so on, because it's a lot easier in many ways to do the practice outside. And actually, traditionally with things like Tai Chi or Qigong or Zhanzhuang, you would do them outside. It would be discouraged from doing them inside, and ideally actually under a tree. You do it under a tree. So it's nice to practice outside, and I'm glad you were able to connect to nature in a beautiful way and to share that with us.
I had another posture question comment, which is that I have been, well, this also, I'll relate it to my earlier comment, which is before I had Lyme, I ran a half marathon. After having Lyme, I am now really into snowshoeing. And one thing I love about snowshoeing is the sense of being a four-legged creature. So I was thinking about the 4 postures, and I was thinking about adding a 5th, which is being on all fours or even climbing when you get information from all 4 limbs about your environment and your balance. And that's been my favorite way to meditate lately, is snowshoeing in the woods. And I really want to associate it with just that information. I mean, it's so cool. It's kind of like standing on the earth gives you a certain amount of data about your environment with your feet. And then when you start connecting with the earth with your hands as well, it's kind of like you're doubling the information that you're receiving.
That's really interesting, and you're making me wish I could go snowshoeing. Poor me, I have to be in sunny California. It's so bad. Yeah. No, but it would be lovely to go snowshoeing, perhaps with you, friend. It's an interesting thought too about the having your hands in there as well. I mean, as I was mentioning, there are of course way more postures than those 4. I mean, there's for example, in yoga, there's a billion asanas that you can do, and different postures and alignments of body, and in all the movement practices, there's a billion variations and so on. But it's helpful to have the simplicity of the 4, and then it's also delightful to branch out and explore different forms of play and movement and bring these same qualities of mindfulness and awareness into whatever form of movement we're doing. Yeah.
I'd like to share a little about my experience. I didn't realize how much my practice needed an infusion of fun. I did notice I haven't been wanting to practice this week, but forcing myself. So this was great. I like the variety, and I stayed outside, and my focus range was flow, mostly in the trees and the sound. And I liked it best standing because I was standing back there and I was closer to the trees that were moving, but also lying down, I got to see the trees moving in a different way. And I enjoyed that a lot. So this is good. It's good for me even to show up every week just to hear someone say that practice can be fun. I believe I've gotten very serious, very, very serious about it. And partly, I think, because I'm in healthcare and I care deeply about people that have situations like that were brought up, long-term effects from conditions and all that, it's been weighing a little heavily on me. So having fun practicing today was really a good break. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, Pam. It's really normal to go through a cycle of just not enjoying it so much where it gets stagnant, and just making a change often makes it fun again. Going outside, laying down, changing techniques, changing how we do the technique, trying something crazy, listening to a new kind of teaching, working with a new teacher, shakes things up and brings some vitality and some fresh air into it. And really glad you were able to connect to that.
I have one more comment. My grandson, who turned 1 last week, he has gone from crawling to walking in this last week. And watching him crawl, just Morgan, when you were talking about all fours, he just gets so into it. And last week when he learned to walk, when he took his first steps, we were all getting excited, and it looked like he was going, "What are you looking at me for? I'm just doing what I always do, which is explore with my body." So he's a real good teacher for me. I'll be spending tomorrow with him and just watching how he decides whether he's going to get from one place to another on all fours or on two legs. And so it's really fun too.
That's so sweet. Enjoy. Mm. Any other questions or comments?
I'm really grateful for this. So thank you for allowing me to attend.
Definitely, Jenny. Really glad you could make it.
Since there's space, part of the reason I have been having trouble meditating in the mornings is because I wake up angry. And I've been through angry cycles before, but my solution to meditation time when I'm angry is not to meditate or to be very distracted. And I can think of what Shinzen might tell me as a list of things, but I want something new and fresh for when I'm angry. Maybe I need to punch something, I don't know, and feel impact. I'm not sure, but that's the phase I'm going in. I have bad dreams all night and then I wake up angry. So if you have any comments, I'd love to hear them.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that that's happening so frequently for you. I know that is really distressing for me when I have bad dreams and wake up not feeling so good. And yeah, I definitely don't always feel like meditating in that state. So it makes a lot of sense. I guess the main thing that comes to mind hearing your report, I mean, I can think of specific strategies you could try and so on, but it's funny that you have a really strong connection to Shinzen and thinking of what he would say. And the reason Shinzen always has so many options for all these situations is because he tried a billion things, because he's Shinzen. Whatever situation you're in, he's got 10 options you can try. And if you don't like those, he's got 10 more options. And it's because he's tried a lot of things. So yeah, it makes sense that like you wouldn't feel particularly called to some of the things that he might suggest, or the inner Shinzen that you've got going on might suggest. And what I'd actually suggest doing is trying a few things yourself, like what could work, and just thinking of 5 or 6 things and seeing what calls to you. I don't know, maybe punching would work. No harm in trying it as long as you don't punch somebody. Pretty low stakes. Be careful. But I don't know. I don't know. I mean, some of the things I would think of to try would be really noticing my state of mind before going to bed and trying to cultivate a positive state of mind before going to bed that's relaxed and compassionate. Actually, in general, there's a list of benefits of metta, loving kindness practice, and 3 of the traditional benefits ascribed to metta are that it's easy to fall asleep, you have good dreams, and that you wake easily. So, you could try just adding in more loving kindness practice that may make things easier. But I'm sure you can think of other things too. You spend some time, and I suspect ultimately that the things that you think of to try will work better for you, both because you think of them and because they'll be more relevant to you in your life. And probably since this is recurring, there's probably some condition or situation that's recurring for you that is causing this. I mean, it could be something you're eating for all you know, or something that's happening at work, or a memory from a long time ago. It's hard to say, but I would trust your own intuition and sense of it more than what happens to come to mind for me, or for Shinzen. Just try things and pay attention to what works. Yeah.
Can I add a comment to that?
Please say.
Yeah, so I also have been dealing with anger a lot for the past year, the past 6 months, and I talked with Soryu about it at length a few months ago. And I just want to +1 the idea of punching things or doing really vigorous exercise. That was something that he quite strongly recommended to me. And he said, there's techniques that you can do to not have the anger come up so much, but for now it is coming up. And so you have to learn how to release it in ways that are healthy and that aren't just going to get stuck. And I've been finding that doing vigorous exercise, like going even just like a 30-second sprint down the street, has been really, really helpful. And we got a punching bag here, which has also been really good. So just finding ways to just like release that energy in some way, I've found really, really helpful and really important.
Thank you so much for adding that, Say. And to be clear, I'm shaking my head because I'm jealous of your punching bag. I wish I had one. It'd be great. A friend of mine was getting into boxing, and I went to visit him, and he had those like mitts, and he was just showing them to me, and I was like trying out the punching, and it was amazing how much pent up energy and anger was in my body that was just so happy to have a chance to be let go of. So thank you for saying that, Say. Really appreciate that. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of today's period. And as always, you can feel free to be in touch with me by email if you have further comments, or I would also welcome any feedback that you might have of things that worked for you or didn't work. Or, I'm growing and learning as a teacher as well, so your feedback helps me to grow. And my email is Tasshin, that's with 2 S's, TASSHIN @monasticacademy.org. And you can be in touch with me there if you like. And I'll be here next week with Olive Oak as well when they're off retreat. It's been so lovely to be with you today. Really happy to have this community, and so much wisdom and joy and curiosity and creativity in this group. And it's refreshing for me to be with you. So thank you for your practice and this community, and hope to see you next week.